I'll leave this with Harish Bhai. And Harish Bhai, please take over, and we'd love to hear what you have to say about this particular
Right.
region and the talk. Thank you.
Me, I hope there's no way of my knowing. So anyway, good. We are and we're going to talk about the Siachen Glacier in the nearby valleys of Sherk Valley, which contains this Galwan Valley and all, which is very much in the news today. So this will be kind of a geopolitically understand this. Now, when I mention always Siachen Glacier, generally I'm asked by scholars and people why India and Pakistan or now China are interested in this area so much, even wage war or fight so much. And the answer lies in its geography. Geographical location of these valleys is such that it becomes very important between Central Asia and India, and particularly a wedge between Pakistan and China. So that's why this is an important valleys, and that everybody has to take care of all the three nations. And then moreover, it is belongs to India, and there is no point, Indian just shutting around that. All right, take it as you like, or this thing. And it is said that the nation which does not understand its geography is condemned by history, and that has happened to us in 1962 with the Chinese. So now it is more and more required that we understand our geography very much, because those who don't understand geography is always condemned by history. So we don't want that to happen again. So at least I hope that the elite and specialized audience which is logged in today would certainly take care of understanding this geography so you can understand better why everybody is after this. So, and the second thing is, they say the why mountaineers are involved in this. I mean, when there is artillery shells fought between Pakistan and India, what we are doing there. So that also, as we will know, the answer lies into history again, because that is like, that is the geography and history was such developed that somewhere mountaineers got into the picture, as I will show by these various pictures and slides. And based on my several visits to this area and going there. Okay. Ravi, how do you move this here? Ah, yes. So I titled this talk as the Battle of Roses after Siachen Glacier. But then applies to even Karakorams, and there is a story why it is Battle of Roses. Now, as you will see in this map, northernmost point of India at Kashmir, and it has been cut off on two sides, one by Pak-occupied Kashmir on the left and Aksai Chin on the right. And Siachen Glacier and the Karakorams act as a kind of a wedge in between. If this Siachen Glacier and our Shyok Valley is not there, then both they merge. India's, in a way, two enemies, they'll get together, and that becomes a very big problem. This is a little close-up of the map. You will see the Siachen Glacier is on the left, and the whole trail route is going around via Galwan Valley, and this is the position of Galwan Valley, which has now suddenly become critical. Otherwise, it was never so much in picture everywhere. And the right side, Aksai Chin, is of course with China from 1962. My first visit to this area was in 1980 when I went to Ladakh, and you can see the empty streets of Ladakh, which was very rarity nowadays. And from Ladakh, you see the snow range behind, that is called the Khardung Reach. And across Khardung Reach becomes the Eastern Karakoram, which is all the bone of contentions and everything is happening there. This is the Khardungla Pass. Nowadays, a lot of people go, but I was sitting there from 1980. And board has remained same. I kept on changing every year. So it is a very nice remembrance to be coming at this point. Now, if you look from, this Khardungla Pass, you have in the center the whole Siachen Glacier going across. But on the right side is the river Shyok, and that is going right to the Karakoram Pass here. And in between this turning is the Galwan Valley, opposite this Shukpa Kunjung Glacier. So this is it. So then at the Khardungla, the army trucks, they pass quite often. And nowadays, of course, there are huge convoys and convoys of trucks are going. But during our days in 1980, one or two trucks would be going. But the road is very bad. On the other side, of course, there's a lot of ice, and everything starts bad, and if the driver is slightly unsure, then you will be having a lot of trouble. And it gets so cold even in September, October, that the diesel freezes. So driver literally put a fire inside the truck to warm up the diesel. Then only the truck will start. Otherwise, whatever you push or do, the truck will not start. And first, we are always wondering what on earth he's doing, putting fire inside. But then in the Nubra Valley, there are several monuments you will find, because this whole valley of Ladakh and Karakoram is part of the Kashmir problem, or what we can say is Kashmir war. So that was in 19 up to 1989 almost. The Kashmir was so peaceful and one could roam around and go. But then militancy broke out in 1989 in a big way, and that sort of led to a lot of terrorist fighting and killing and everything. And suddenly everything became very say unsafe for tourists to go or mountaineers to roam around freely. And this has, as we know, as a history from 1947, the whole war is going on, and now it is at peak. And this whole Siachen area we are talking about has, in a way, relation to this militancy. Now, this what is called as line of control here was drawn up in 1947 between India and Pakistan. It is an official boundary, been constantly coming. And the Siachen Glacier is here, is between the Indira Col, the northernmost point of India today, and the Karakoram Pass. And this is the area of Aksai Chin, which is now just now in problem, but it's been problem right since 1962. So this is the area which we have been, traveling and writing about. Now, first, we from Leh, we traveled down to the Nubra Valley and turn east. And this is the magnificent peak of Aktash, white rock, that is means. And it is a lovely peak, very difficult to climb. And we have to cross several nalas. Like here you see, the whole crossing of Nala is very much a whole exercise, and it may take about more than half a day to get all the party and everybody else together. And it is very scary, I can assure you. Now, we were the team of Japanese and Indians together. Here we are all sitting at the Darbuk Gompa, from where the road starts. Our time there was no road, and we had to go on mules and walking. So this is our team gathered there. We are 6 Japanese and 6 Indians, and in 2002, and we are enjoying. Now, this whole area belongs to the explorations of Zorawar Singh, General Zorawar Singh. He was the Dogra general from Jammu, and an absolute right-hand man of Gulab Singh of Jammu, and which came under Ranjit Singh of Punjab. And he was a very brilliant person and great technician, and he brought lots of army. 2-3 times he came to Ladakh, conquering everything. And even he went through this Shoyak Valley to Karakoram Pass. So any talk of, this Karakoram or Galwan not belong to us is nonsense, because Zorawar Singh's in 1800s also gone from here and is completely conquered everything. And there are records available in the British and Zorawar Singh's diaries that he had done. So he went till Karakoram Pass, till he was called back. Otherwise, he was going to Central Asia. But then he concentrated going toward the east into Tibet. And that's where the Chinese in Tibet checkmated him. They did something like Second World War with Russians. They let him come in as much as possible. And once he was inside, the Ladakhi winter came, and it was severe. And these people of Jammu were not trained to live in winter. And so the entire army was trapped. Then Chinese attacked, including Zorawar Singh. Everybody was killed. And all the remains were buried there, because the Tibetans still believe that he was a powerful man, and they have always worshipped a powerful body. So that is still going on. At Toya, there is a big monument to him. But then the whole area was part of the Ranjit Singh's empire, Karakoram. And that was ultimately passed on to British with Treaty of Amritsar in 1949, and of course to the British later on and to India. Now, this is the whole valley of Shoyak, where you go along. It's completely barren like this. But then if you come in monsoons, or there is no monsoon per se, melting of snow, this whole part will get filled up with water, and it becomes difficult to cross. But when this river is frozen in winter, there are huge amount of caravans would go through this, because the mules can go easily, and even we can also go right, left easily, and because it needs to be crossed several times. And so this was a major trail going to Karakoram Pass, and to supply our military towards the north. This trail was used in winter with large mule caravans. So we had to also go early, about late April, so that the water is less and one could cross right and left. And we had to do it 37 times, cross the river, which initially you get really irritated, but then you get used to it. So this is how we have to cross. Sometimes the water flow is quite a bit, so we all get together and you go ahead. And it's luckily you can see it's not too deep, only up to knee deep, but then it can within about say 15 days more, it will come right to your waist and below. So you have to be careful. Particularly porters and Sherpas are very scared of water. So you have to almost hold them to go across. But the mules, they do it in great style. They have got some instinct, the neck, where to go, how to go exactly, and they're just left alone, and they'll just cross very leisurely and nicely. So almost without mules, nothing can move here, and that's why he called mules the kings of Karakoram. And they are so good that our Muslim contractor decided to kiss mule every morning. They'll say, "Come on, start carrying," and each mule has got a name and peculiar habits and everything. So which also you start observing, because we had 85 mules and our trail was, or the with mules was about 30 days. So constantly you get used to the mule, who are they, what are they, and some mules you are riding, you know his name also and what is behaving. Now this is an important map. You see the entire completely Aksai Chin area, which is now in straight lines, and this is the area now taken over by China in 1962 war. And you find this road in between. That was the Bill Aksai Chin road by China, and it was in fact for this road that they fought so much to go down. And this whole border and the round is definitely a little disputed. What is what? And these little dark lines on the left are areas which have been, taken over by China by later on. But you will notice this Galwan here. So this is the Galwan River, which would come down and come down to Shok. And because of this valley is connected, the Mongol invasions, all the Genghis Khan included, they all came through this Galwan axis down below, because Galwan is about 3 valleys inside, and they came down here. And so Ladakhi kings, they built a fort here to protect Yurgolak. But then the main thing is, in this Galwan valley, there was one chap called Ghulam Rasul Galwan, and the whole valley is named after him. He was the explorer of it. He was a mule leader and used to go with many people, and young husband and all different people were there. He was going, and then he became the leader of caravans, which was he was then very expert. And people wrote about him. And then was American Barrett. He wrote about book, and this is the book as narrated to him. And but main thing to notice, he belongs to Central Asia, and at that time there was a tradition that all the Central Asian caravans would come down, and they would stay in Leh. And if there is winter and they are unable to go back, then they will stay back in Leh for the whole year, because there is no way they could cross the passes during winter. But then they would stay, they would marry Iraqi girls and almost settle there. So their children are called Argans. So there is a whole valley called Argan Glass Valley, which was given to them, that you live here, do what you like. And because of scarce resources of wood and food, Argans has to live in those valleys. And he was one of the famous Argans. He went with several people, but then his flame was with, in 1899, he went with one British assistant commissioner. And with that commissioner, they went and they were discovering and recognizing all these valleys east of the shore. So he entered into this, and he went in this valley, Galwan Valley, which is now known, and explored thoroughly and brought back all the news and everything. And the Sahib named the valley after him, and which is very rare that a native explorer from Ladakh has a valley named after him. So it's a pretty very matter of pride for Ladakhis and for Rasul Galwan that the valleys for him. And today now the Galwan has become almost internationally famous. This is the area of Galwan Valley, also straight ahead in this cloud is the Galwan Valley. Here the river comes out and meets the Shok, which you see in the front. And you can see the terrain is completely barren and completely full of rocks, and there is no way anything can be done here. And so this is the valley where now there is a road on the other side of it. For our time, we had to go by mules. And it is this road that the Chinese are objecting, and came down from the valley opposite, and all the skirmishes have taken place here. And this Valley, Galwan Valley was also in news in 1960s when, during just before the Chinese attack on India, the government decided to have forward policy that Indian post must be taken forward ahead, right till the LSC or even beyond, against even the advice of army generals. You cannot do this, you cannot violate and go ahead, and the Chinese would be more and more upset. So it was here at Galwan, because of insistence of political masters, the post was made, and another post was made in Longju in Arunachal Pradesh. And both these posts were overlooking the road or the army maneuvers of Chinese, which they did not like. And there are a lot of film shootings also when the people came and gathered around Galwan post. In Hakikat film, if you know, they Hamara land, chale jao, and all that. But then we stood, stay put there. But when the 62 war started on 20th of October, first thing China did was wipe out the Galwan post and the Longju post. And that was actually almost the beginning of the war. So that way the Galwan has remained in news, and then since then nothing has happened. But accordingly, everywhere Galwan is in news. Now, this is the Yurgulak fort at the mouth of Galwan, because the Genghis Khan and the Mongols used to come down from Galwan river and go cross Shoyak. And opposite side there is Shukpa Kunchang river, and through that they could go to Nura, which has many villages and is a very fertile valley. So to prevent that, Ladakhi kings built this Yurgolak fort, which is now of course in ruins. But that was a standard passage coming from other side to here, and Ladakhi kings would protect them or fight them at Yurgolak fort. The route continues from Galwan all along the Shoyak, and it's very barren, and these mules can cover up about 25-30 kilometers per day. So if you're trekking, it will be very tough walking with them, because they walk at a rhythm, quite a fast rhythm. And everybody, all explorers, they ride, right from Shipton, young husband, and everybody. You just go on the mules, and that mules early morning you settle down, and it'll keep on going on a rhythm. And you just can't get off the mule because it won't let you. And without this muleteer, it'll run away. So then you are left in this whole barrenness without anything. So one has to be very careful about all this. And the mules have this horseshoe, which has to be changed almost every 2-3 days because the horseshoe gets worn out, and they have to remove. And this horseshoe has allowed a lot of trade and knowledge come from Central Asia to India and South Asia. Otherwise, originally were very primitive. So that's why if you notice that this horseshoe is considered lucky charm in our Indian houses. Outside the door, many people have hammered a horseshoe, and because that has brought a lot of prosperity and knowledge to India. And horseshoe is used still. And there are the whole mule caravan going. It's all in rhythm, and you can observe all the mules, and they have got their friends and lovers, and they keep on talking, walking, roaming around. But you have almost nothing to do because they won't listen to you. They are on in their own form. Then we reach an army post at Chongtash, and we suddenly saw a big canister of gas coming up. So we said, this is now the airdrop is coming. So for the airdrop, this is the signal to airmen that everything is fine. You can come and drop all the parachutes, because certain parachutes don't open. So then the whole thing, like say kerosene, will come down like a bomb. Boom. So everybody has to be aware. And the mules, they are expert. They know exactly when the airdrop is coming. They run away. But if you are not aware, you can be caught. And this is the airdrop which is coming in. Hundreds of parachutes will be coming in, and they will all drop. And then the army will be kept next 1 or 2 days busy just collecting them and deciphering them and making a list of it. So all these things you see while trekking toward these passes. And you have to constantly keep river. This is our Japanese friend, Mr. Sakai, crossing a mule on a Shoyak river. And it's sometimes scary, but then mules are very, very sturdy. If you trust them, they'll just take you across. And in a barren Karakoram, the Shoyak river is not for drinking water. So certain points, there are little springs where you can camp and drink water. This is a Sultan Chushku. Chushku is a Nala where Sultan of Yarkand had to drink and stay. And then you reach Depsangla, which is another unique thing. The red plateau it is called, and it is flat, 18-kilometer long flat plateau, and you can lose your way. So originally the dead mules' bones were put everywhere to mark the trail, and that's why it is called the skeleton trail. But now, of course, there is a minimum road by through which army drives the jeeps. But it is a kind of a far long plateau, and in the middle of the plateau there is a small army camp track junction. And you can imagine that whole two nations are sort of controlled by such small little plateaus. And on the right side, where is the border? Nobody knows. Even Chinese and Indians both keep on pushing where it go. And this sort of a small thing is very severe to stay, very cold, winds and storms, everything is coming here. And then you come to Daulat Bek Oldi, which is also nowadays in news, DBO, where there is an airstrip and a small, now a big army camp through which one is to pass through. And they always now put now jerry cans instead of skeletons to do so. The Chipchap River in between is very slow and very deep, and you suddenly don't know because you got soft, uh, let's say, ground, and suddenly it will stop. So we have also stopped there, and we had to all jump out of the river and ultimately, go out and go. Now, somewhere in this river, there is another river called Remo, and we had to cross that somewhere. So I and my friend and Huzefa and Trisha, we have this Kaiwan Mistri. We crossed. He was a Parsi gentleman, boy from Mumbai. We had done a lot of trekking and climbing together. And four of us with one porter fell in that river, slipped. But myself, Huzefa, and the dancing, we swam out of it. While Kaiwan hit his head against a stone, and he was unconscious, and that's what taken by a river, and he died in that river. And Shoyak River itself means the river of death. And for us, almost it came really true that Kaiwan Mistry from Mumbai, he sort of died. He was a very wonderful gentleman in the dramatics field. And we had done several trips together, and it was a very, very sad loss. This is the place called Polu, whether these are the two places behind, where all the Yarkandi traders used to shelter themselves and sit down because there's only this big mountain which shelters against the Karakoram wind. And there is a stone by Visar the explorer is here. And we put another stone next to it in memory of our Kaiwan Mistry of 1968-2000. And it's a lovely small couplet we put in his memory, and it's sort of communally cemented. So I'm sure it will remain for a lot of time, and he will be remembered for at least 100 years as long as this is maintained by the army. But it was a very unfortunate loss for us there. Ahead from Polu, we're coming to the Karakoram Pass. And this is a vast valley. And because the name is Karakoram, the Black Rocks, which is, as you turn to the mountain, it comes as the Karakoram Pass. And here we are standing at the Karakoram Pass. And as you could see, there is nothing, no view and no major things here at Karakoram Pass. But it is so famous that the entire range, Karakoram, is named after this pass. Except some small black rocks, which gives its name, there is nothing to be seen at this pass. And it has been visited by both sides, army every day, and now it is almost a motorable road. And this one bone structure has been made, which demarcates that this is the pass, right side China and left side India. And there are patrols every day or occasionally, but in a way it is nobody is fighting here. And army with us, officers, they came, they left some gift for the Chinese. And they assured us that the Chinese will come today or tomorrow and they'll lift another gift for us. So okay, we are that way very friendly relation. We don't meet each other, but there is no tension at present. But now one does not know what's happening. But then you come down from Karakoram Pass towards Remo, you will find many stones like this. And these are the graves. These are the graves of Indian soldiers who died in 1962 war with China. It was a very grave reminder. At that time, our soldiers quite unprotected and less of equipment and ammunition. And a lot of these have been massacred by the Chinese advancing. The Chinese came down right almost to the upper reaches of Leh. And this was a very tragic reminder. And there are several graves like this. From here, we cut across and reach Col Italia. It's along the Remo Glacier. It took us, of course, a week or 10 days, and mules have gone. But we reached in bad weather, standing at Col Italia. And this is the ridge by which we cross over towards the Siachen area, the divide between Nubra Valley and the Shoyak Valley. This is our camp on Col Italia, which is a very high camp, about 19,000 feet. And because now there were new mules, we had to carry all our luggage and ferry with us. So then as a result, it was time consuming and wanted to stay everywhere, and slowly everything was brought up. We had about 6 Sherpas also to help, and that really helped us a lot. From Col Italia, you go down and pass along the glacier, which is a very thing. You can see how minuscule we human beings look in front of this huge, completely big Karakoram walls. So that, and then we camped at a peak called Lakshmi, where we had a big camp. And from this camp, there were going to be two things. One team was going to climb a peak called Padmanabh, 7,000 meter, which is quite a landmark, about 23,000 feet. And I and one Japanese, and we were to go on the Taram plateau, which is a vast snow plateau, and to explore that and come around. So this is the climb of Padmanabh Peak. Two Indians and two Japanese, they went, and there were lots of ups and downs 2-3 times, and it was quite a technical peak. But one has to appreciate that you are so far away, in the Karakoram, that if something happens or something goes wrong, rescue and all that would be very, very challenging and difficult. So as a result, this is a climb has to be done very securely. And all luggage, of course, everything was taken, and we have everything with this Viagra. And slowly, be building up in next 2-3 days, and finally sort of going to the summit, which was very steep, the last slopes. One had to climb very carefully. And this is Hiroshi Sakai on the summit, and he's carrying an Indian flag and a photograph of my son, Lieutenant Nawang Kapadia, who had died by then. So as a tribute, they carried the photograph to the summit. And this was a very good achievement, mountaineering wise. It was a very serious climbing. And as we came down, we could immediately look towards the west and the high peak of Saltoro Kangri 1 and 2, and the helicopters flying. So now we knew that now we are in the war zone, the Siachen Glacier, and we have to enter there. So we quietly walk down to the snout of the Siachen Glacier, and now we enter another region or another war. This is the snout of the Siachen Glacier, about 12,000 feet. And it has come in great thing because the 21-year-old war was fought here. And now there is ceasefire, but the soldiers are still staying onto the top. And in a way, war has not ended because soldiers have to, pay a price everywhere. So this is the snout of the Siachen Glacier. Now, Siachen Glacier is 76 kilometers long, and that makes it the second longest glacier in the world apart from polar regions. And all the water and ice melts comes through this little mouth and forms the Nubra River. And there are roses around the Siachen, which is a wonder of wonders, and growing anywhere, up on the rocks or up on the side valleys or anything. And there is a little legend behind it. Once all these Yarkandis from Central Asia was come and camp onto the glacier, and the Baltis would go and trade with them. And once they invited all the Yarkandis to their village, and from the village, the Yarkandis kidnapped one beautiful woman, Balti girl, and took her with them. So Baltis went to Mullah Amir and told him about this tragedy, and he said, okay, now this is not correct, and their home in Siachen is very dangerous to us. So Mullah gave him an amulet, a small little amulet, and that they were to put on Bilafon La, and he instructed, don't come back the same way, go around the glacier and river, and then turn around and come. So Baltis, feeling little lazy, they put the amulet there, but returned the same way. So next day, big storm came, huge storm which destroyed everything on Siachen and made it as it is today, completely barren. But because Mullah's instruction was not followed to the full, the roses remained. And the storm could not destroy these wild roses growing on Siachen. And hence, the Siachen got its name. Sia is a Balti word for flower or rose, and Chan is the place. So Siachen, and it has got these roses which are still there in the side valleys. And while trekking, you could see many places these wild roses growing nearby, and it is a very wonderful sight at about 18,000 feet to walk among the roses. Siachen was always wanting to be explored, and that was Sir Francis' young husband, one of the British great explorer. So he was the first person deputed by the British in 1883 to look for Siachen from the northern side because they wanted to see all the routes coming to India to prevent Russians entering. So he went to the north, explored Shasgam Valley, and finally reached the northern point of Siachen with his one of his famous guide Turdikol. And there he saw this, you know, completely Indira call from the north, and which he thought was very difficult, which is looks also. Or to the left, he reached the foot of Turkestan La. And but he said that this is not the end of the glacier. According to him, another long glacier remains behind this, and that needs to be explored. So this is the kind of the worm which satellite maps nowadays show you. Siachen snout is here till road, and then you go up the Siachen, and there are the different. This called Italia, and your young husband is reached here, and this Indira call today in the northernmost point of India, and this is the Urdo Glacier, which is named after tortoise. And this side on the Pakistan, this Saltoro range, which is now the bone of contention, there are lots of fight has taken place here. So young husband shared all his findings with his friend Dr. Tom Longstaff, another explorer. And Longstaff started seriously looking into the extent of Siachen. First, he came from the west to Bilafundla with the pass seen here. And this picture is nowadays not possible because both sides after the war have India and Pakistan control this pass, and anyone coming from any other side would be absolutely in trouble. So he reached Bilafundla, and from there he speaks of Siachen. And this speaks, then he went back and turned around and came via the snout and saw almost the same peaks. So by which he concluded that this Bilafundla is not the border of Siachen. The Siachen Glacier goes far ahead, and it is another about 40 kilometers again. And he wrote on his report that by doing this we had stolen some 400 square kilometers from Central Asia and added to the British India's almanac here. And that was, of course, sometimes resented by Pakistan and other areas, that as if somebody has stolen the area, which cannot be done. Next year came, two explorers from America, and she was Fanny Bullock Workman and Hunter William Workman, and they were cyclists. They would cycle all over India, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Bangalore, and they are just interested about cycle, cycle, cycle. And then things got very hot in April or May. They would go to Kashmir and hired one Parsi gentleman called Bairamji, who was an agent. And Bairamji will make all arrangements for them to go to the Siachen Glacier or other Karakoram glaciers, which they would explore. So they came to Siachen Glacier in 1911 and 1912, and that their books gave us a lot of information. And they stayed for months together on the Siachen Glacier. And she was a very, let's say, follower of votes for women. The American women were not allowed to vote. He was passionately, fighting for the women's rights. So he take the posters of, completely that vote for women and liberation for Americans. And wherever he climbed, whatever he did, she left this pamphlet on the top. Of course, it flew away within a days. But he reached many points and named many points. And here she is standing on Indira Call, which she had named. It has nothing to do with Indira Gandhi, but Indira is the name of Lakshmi. So she, in her own wisdom, named it after Lakshmi as Indira, and that has now become the northernmost point of India. Then from 1912 to around 1971, the glacier was left in oblivion. Everybody can be, nobody bothered about the glacier except few security parties. But in 71, there was the war, India-Bangladesh war with Pakistan. And that was first started in Karakoram, as we, as a divisional technique. The Indian army started in Karakoram to liberate Kashmir from Pakistan. And that is where in 1947, this Colonel Rinchin, in photograph, he fought as a young 17-year-old boy. And in 1971, this again war took place. He was again leading, now as a 50-year-old man. As a result of both war, he got Mahavir Chakra, which is a very rare honor for one person in lifetime to get two Mahavir Chakras and over so many years apart to remain fit. So he was the person who ultimately, decided a lot of things on Siachen and saved Ladakh from Pakistanis for us. After the Bangladesh war, India had 85,000 Pakistani soldiers as the prisoner. And we were in a very strong position. So Zulfikar Bhutto, Prime Minister of Pakistan, came to India. And with Mrs. Gandhi, they went to Shimla and signed what is that famous Shimla Agreement of 1972. And later on in the books, the secretaries have said that they briefed Mrs. Gandhi that now because we have 85,000 soldiers with us, we could pressurize Bhutto to sign out the entire area, that is, including the border of Siachen Glacier, and there would have been no war. But then Bhutto was a wily customer. He told Mrs. Gandhi, if I do this, then Pakistan army, when I go back, will dethrone me and I'll be arrested. I am the only civil prime minister in last 16 years. So there will be no Shimla agreement and everything will go. But आप मुझ पे भरोसा कीजिए, we'll do this at a later date. That was the exact words they used in the book. So before signing, Mrs. Gandhi looked at Bhutto and said, we agree to do this at the later date. And he replied, yes, please trust me. And the agreements were signed. But this trust and bharosa remained for only a few months because then he went to United Nations, Bhutto, and gave his famous speech that I will wage 1,000-year jihad against India, but I will not give them an inch of Kashmir. So an opportunity to solve down Siachen Glacier and stop the war that time was lost. This is what you see, and this is what they agreed. This red worm going all across every point was marked in a map and everything. And again, it stopped at NJ9842. So that has become an historic point. And then the agreement writes that the line shall follow hence north to the glacier. But which glacier was not specified, whether Siachen Glacier, Baltoro Glacier, or where. And it remained as a lacuna that which area belongs ahead of this belongs to who. And taking advantage of this little thing, and this is a agreement signed by on the map by both the commanders of both the sides in presence of prime ministers, and taking advantage of this little lacuna, Pakistan promoted expeditions going from their area, Dansam, Gyari, and Siachen Glacier to climb peaks on the opposite side. And this was kind of a technique to develop that the world is recognizing Pakistan to come and climb in Siachen Glacier. And 18 such expeditions came from 1978 to 83. And I wonder whether Indians knew about it or no, or what happened, but nobody was stopping them. And the main thing was all the expeditions, they go to Teram Kangri and high peaks. But they would always carry a Japanese and Pakistani flags together, and they were always put on the summit of any peak they climbed. And always, two Pakistani soldiers, officers would climb summit with them. This was kind of creating a precedent or de facto control that Pakistan has claimed here. And Indian Army also sent two expeditions led by legendary Colonel Narendra Kumar, who was the leader of both this. And they went to different parts of the Siachen Glacier and brought back a lot of information, which are the peaks, what can be placed and what can be those things. This was in 81. And then soon the map started appearing through Pakistan and America particularly, that from drawing the line from NGN 9842 to Karakoram Pass, thus giving a large area of the entire Siachen Glacier to Pakistan as a de facto gift. Of course, this was objected to by India now, and a lot of discussions and quarrels were taking place. But in the meantime, Pakistan got more adventurous, and they gave a permission for an expedition to come from Bilafundla, cut across to peak Remo peaks. That Remo peaks are overlooking China or toward China and Karakoram Pass. So that would have been the final nail that the Japanese come here and with Pakistanis. So then India and China, China and Pakistan would have a little common ground. So this was objected to by India. And on 13th of April, 1984, Indian Army landed onto the glacier. That was the Baisakhi day. And the long 20-year-old war started. Now it was more of an artillery war. There are no hand-to-hand fights, but the artillery opens up on both sides. And a lot of people are, killed only by artillery shells. And of course, by weather. And before guns, they are also being used in this area, which was later on. And Mrs. Gandhi visited this Siachen Glacier area and stopped with everybody in that June, July, sort of 1984, and she was murdered in October 1984, assassinated. So it was for a short period. He was a witness to the Siachen War. So government of India then decided to send expeditions of Indians and foreigners joined together from Indian side, so as a counter threat to Pakistanis. So that was I was leader of that first expedition. Went from Mumbai. My friends are there. You could see on the right side, Muslim contractor and Zarsik Boga. And near to camera is Dave Wilkinson, leader of the British side. So we went to Leh. We had a liaison officer. We had a lot of discussions. And that time war was very active. It was 84 and now we are here in 85. So we had to wait for a time to go. And the British friends in center, you see Victor Saunders. On the left is uh, Stephen Venables. So right, John Fodringham and Meena Agarwal and Boga. They're all good friends. The glacier was quite terrible in shape and very difficult to walk. But then inside, we luckily found some flat grounds and finally reached our Remo peaks, which we have to climb. The peak on the left, peak 3, around 7,000 meters, that was climbed by us. Two climbers went up. But it was this peak of Remo 1 that was attempted, and two climbers reached almost 300 feet near the summit. But then, after that, they're trying to pitch a camp to go up to the summit next day. And in digging those camps, Stephen Venables dropped his rucksack. And rucksack went down into the valley, carrying his sleeping bag and crampons and many, many things. And there was no way they could have gone ahead. In fact, withdrawing from there, he and Victor Saunders became a very major challenge. And it must be said to their experience, Saunders and Venables, that they could come down safely. Many other people would have lost their lives after such a loss. But from the summit, what they saw was this ice plateau or snow plateau of Teram Shahar. And it has got line of peaks, were like, Saltoro Kangri, the highest peak in the world, the unclimbed peak in the world, and K2 at the far distance. So this is the picture which we noted. And as I just showed you, in 2002, we explored that area. On the second part of the expedition, we went into the South Glacier, South Terong Glacier, which has nobody had been, and reached Terong Col. And this col actually very clearly marked. It is quite easy to get down, as you could see here. And this will lead down to the Shoyak Valley and almost quite near to this Galwan episode, which is just now happening. So it needs everything to be defended because just now this nobody can go through in a large way here, but one does not know what say techniques can develop, and maybe say certain crafts or something can develop like hovercraft. We can go over snow. Then this becomes very easy in next few years. And few years or 30, 40 years is nothing for history. So this needs to be very carefully preserved. On the way back, the Terong River was in floods, so we had a quite difficulty getting out, and we fixed ropes and everything. And then time came for me now to completely go through the entire glacier on the right center where you see the Siachen Glacier. So that I would like to go completely, for which we left with a team of our Indians. When we reached the snout of the glacier, you could see the extent. It is 3 kilometers wide and at least about 1,000 or 2,000 feet high. You could see people down below, which are very small ant-like looking. But of course, there are roses, because as per the legend, they are still everywhere around. Then there is a Siachen battle school going on. All the soldiers are trained. They may be great soldiers, great fighters, but mountaineering techniques, they may not know. So they are 3 weeks. They are trained very seriously. And of course, they are very quick learners and they do it very well. And there are boards like "No enemy can dare when Jammu Kashmir Light Infantry is here." And this is all very nice slogan and confident. But behind this, you have to pay a price. Like this memorial wall, which has names of all the soldiers who died, written in 3 columns initially. And then once I went last time, there were 4 columns and 4 walls, written both sides with the names. And sometimes you find this crematorium going on near the base camp, which is a very sad sign. And all the soldiers that they moved up with this will go through these gates made by their own battalion. And in a way, it becomes a little, let's say, very emotional moment, because they know that they all will not return through this back through these gates. Somebody would be sick, so they'll be flown out of a helicopter. Some will die, and only few will stagger back through these gates. So this is an important point where they would go. And behind, on the rock walls, there are temples which they've made. One temple is for all goddesses and gods, and the soldiers finally just going up to the glacier would wear full uniform and worship. Or there is a church where they would pray, and on the right side is the Idgah wall where the Muslims will also offer namaz. But apart from the war, if you go onto the glacier, it is a very beautiful place for mountaineers, for trekkers even, and the beauty is unparalleled. You know, this glacier ice pools, and there's ancient all green ice you could see down below, which is also wonderful. But then towers and peaks, this Siachen tower would sort of compel some major rock climber to come and climb. And the glacier meanders his way right from this all this thing, and this all foreshortened as we call it. Distance looks short, but then this is can be a very, very deceptive thing if you start walking. And the glacier shows its teeth, crevasses, like these huge crevasses where you have to be very careful if you go right, left, because falling down here will be very dangerous. And as you can see here, almost you have to ride like a horse onto the edge, because both sides are steep down. And if you fall, you will most probably die because it's ice, and you will bang something and you will be gone. And at many dangerous places, they have put ladders. And these ladders with a full rucksack and full weight is quite difficult to cross or descend or climb, as the standing ladders also tell you. And when there are no ladders or anything is possible, this is what you have to go, like jump, and which is a very scary affair. And for a mountaineers or small team, it is possible. But when the army has to move so many soldiers, then that becomes a very, major maneuver, and they have to go very carefully, roped up everything, and move very slowly. There are camps at the regular intervals, and because of lack of space and snow, say for example, this tower behind is the kitchen. So for lunch, when you go up and eat and come back, it becomes a little scary affair. Dal bhat. After dal bhat, you have to come down this whole little rickety ladder. But our Jawans are very, very powerful. They're very good, very welcoming, and they're absolutely settled down very fast with roti, chapati, everything. And they know how to welcome, as you see this, welcome to Camp 1 with the photograph, and the saying Tagada Raho, that is the symbol of, say, Assam regiment. When they say, whenever meet everybody, they say Tagada Raho, sir. And all camps are well stocked. A lot of things are kept there, at least for 6 months stock they keep. If it is less, then immediately come. But everything comes by helicopter. These huge helicopters, they bring a lot of luggage. And they have to be sort of, once there, to be ferried by Jawans. Like this, it's going up. Or sometimes small ferries have been made. By wires, it goes up. So all activities constantly going on when the soldiers moving up and down, and there are a lot of changes is happening. But their main job is, of course, to fight. So here you will find they are checking their guns and wireless, and all the small light guns. Also, they have to operate. We were having a lunch, and they got orders, so they just rushed, giving up everything and waited next to the guns. But again, I said, if you forget the war, the mountains are also brilliant and beautiful. Here you see one Sinki Kangri peak on the right side, and all other peaks have got something, and all are unclimbed major peaks. And as this is the one peak that we climbed, Padmanabh is the picture of that, and Japanese going up. And as we go up towards the northernmost point, you see these different camps of army which you have to stay. And the terrain also becomes beautiful, but at the same time, it has become more treacherous also. Now, one other unique feature of this glacier is temples to OP Baba. There was one observation post of artillery, and there was officer called Om Prakash. So he directed accurate fire to save a lot of lives, and he was killed ultimately. So all temples are created for OP Baba because there are no other religious symbols here. So people would salute and go up and salute to the next OP Baba quickly. And inside there are very simple little things with Jai OP Baba and the flags. And on the flags, if you can observe, there is a name of Subedar Sharma, rifle name Farooq Hussain, and then Kamal Singh, and all variety Hindu, Muslims, and Buddhist names. They're all mixed nationality are fighting. And many times, ignorant foreign correspondents, they say that this is a war between Hindus and Muslims, which is far from true. It is a war between two nations, India and Pakistan. And Indian Muslims are fighting shoulder to shoulder with Indian soldiers everywhere. In fact, the soldiers, they always say, a bullet does not know your religion, so why we should? And there is a huge amount of camaraderie between everybody. And there is a peak, small peak opposite what is known as the Bana post. It's originally a peak of Qaeda post after Qaeda-e-Azam by Pakistani. And this was a very important peak. From there, they could, look around to all the Indian flights and everything. So it was decided in 1988 to capture this peak. And the Indian soldiers, stood 2 nights on the way and slowly reached to the summit. And a lot of lives were lost. And ultimately, they fought with the Pakistanis and knocked off the whole post, as the painting here shows you. And this post is still been after. And this post was captured by Subedar Bana Singh, who became the Paramveer Chakra, one of the highest honors of India. And the post has been named as Bana Post after him. So it was a very brave and one of the best fights of the Siachen Glacier. And on the glacier in Professor Dainali of Italy and his friend Miss Kalau had come in 1930, and they stayed there for a while, and they looked at this peak, Saltoro Kangri. Peak 1 is towards the behind, and that behind peak is basically peak 1, which has been climbed often means 3 times, and the front is Saltoro Kangri 2, the big rock wall, which has not been climbed at all. So it becomes the highest unclimbed virgin peak in the world. So one day when Siachen war is over, I am sure this will be very much in demand. They left, kind of a stone written on this Dainali, and this is the pass which straight ahead which they went through, and that pass is behind. And he named it as Col Italia. And they crossed the pass with around 400 porters, with Miss Kalau in middle, as you could see. And this is the pass that we had come in from the other side. So this is kind of to link up both the ideas. Army also uses several contraptions like the scooter, which can carry a lot of luggage. And, it's up and down, it goes quite fast. And if you're lucky, then they will invite you for lunch, go through the scooter, have lunch, lower camp and come back. So it's that way, in a way, it's a very good place to go. And the camps are also now very much into smaller and smaller. And you down the glacier, which looks, very much high plateau. And now we are nearing the Siachen, Indira Col, which is somewhere here. And we had to face a storm. And with the storm, in this little small bunker, 8 of us were staying for 3 days. And one could realize how it can really get on your mind. Because in a small company, 8 of us staying there. As we came out, this is a very high peak of Siya Kangri. And finally, we reached Turkistan La, Vijay Kothari and myself. And behind you see the glacier. That is where young husband had reached in 1883. So now, in a way, that exploration was complete. And young husband was correct. From this Turkistan La, Siachen Glacier goes down for 98 kilometers of walking. And next day, I was at Indira Col, which was reached by bullock workmen, and that being the northernmost point of India. And from Indira Col, you can look down toward the Urdok Glacier, by which Central Asia and early explorers, young husband and company had come down. And it is really a long, long glacier. That's why it is named as a tortoise glacier. You have to walk very slowly on this glacier. And other important thing is this is the center square is the point Siachen, and water melting below my feet will go down south to Arabian Sea, and water melting towards the north will go down here to Lake Caracas. So it is really a true divide between Central Asia and South Asia, and it becomes an important geographical point for everybody. And in winter, it gets so cold that if you have warm water and you throw it in the sky, the whole atmosphere is so cold that it will turn into icicles. before falling down to ground. And one can imagine in this, soldiers have to live, and it goes down till minus 40 and below because thermometers don't. But then this is a kind of an indication how cold it could get. We came down to the first camp and then sort of had a small campfire celebrating that we has gone there, and finally returned to the base camp back to the OP Baba temple to sort of thank. We had a very good opportunity and a very good trip. Now our trip that was over, and Nawang was with me. Nawang Kapadia, my son, just about age of 20 that time, and he talked to a lot of officers and Jawans, and he was very excited about the army, and he understood what they've been doing. We were a cloth merchant. We were having a shop in Mumbai, and he used to sit there, and he said, "This is an air-conditioned jail for me. I would like to go and enjoy with the army and hard life." So he trained very hard, joined Officers Training Academy, and ultimately was commissioned in the Gurkha Regiment of the Indian Army. But in the war in Kashmir, he was killed, felled by a terrorist bullet. And this is a little memorial to him in Almora. And though we lost our son, but it has to be remembered that India needs many such young people to defend this country. And but then that way the war had almost entered our house. So there was something needed to be done. And that's why we kept on looking at, the glacier. And there is a lot of talking we are doing. The glacier is an environmental mess, absolutely. You could see there are camps and completely this with so many people living in a war situation is basically, you cannot just happen to there. There are many of these used ammunition shells that need to be cleaned up and do what you like. And all the human waste is put into drums and rolled down into the glacier. If one of these days this breaks, then it will create another major environment disaster. But then some steps have been taken. This is, of course, a picture of army putting up the kerosene lines. All the kerosene will be pumped up this glacier by variety of junctions. And that sort of makes everything very warm for them. And they don't have to carry kerosene up there. And no more pollution of that at least. And solar panels have been used to warm water and used for heating in the room. These are very small measures which have been taken, but glacier would be served very well served with this. And this is my favorite picture of India, Siachen Glacier and Indian soldiers marching over it. But then as the young officers in discussions tell us, sir, what do? We don't want our children and grandchildren sitting on this glacier in snow, trying to defend it. Some solution has to be found because otherwise it will become difficult on exchequer. So that's where we study what is called the peace parks. So there is a system in the IUCN, in the United Nations, in the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And there is when two sides cannot agree to many things, then a peace park is formed. Both sides withdraw, and ultimately nature is allowed to grow. But this can, of course, be done when two sides agree, India and Pakistan, and which is, of course, proving very difficult. And there are many peace parks all across the world, including our area also between Nepal, India, Nepal, Tibet, and all the around you see. But it has not become possible between India and Pakistan, of course, due to obvious reasons. So to that, I mean, United Nations through, we organized and climbed off peak called Monch in the Alps. I am in the front and the two guys behind me are Pakistanis leading mountaineers. And I was with one Mandeep Singh Soin, our another Indian mountaineer. So we, four of us, we climbed a small peak called Monch under the United Nations to declare that we mountaineers are one in preserving mountains and something should be done. So when we went to the summit, Indian and Pakistani flags were unfurled, and possibly this is one of the rarest time when Indian Pakistani flags are together on summit of any peak. But all these years of fighting, enmity cannot be turned into friendship overnight. So that sense of competition remains between two sides. As no sooner we unfurled our flag, my companion nudged me and said, "Just raise our flag little higher." So that sort of a competition is always gone in, and one wants to upmanship is bound to be there. But we hope that all this peace park and all the suggestions or something will go. Just now there is a ceasefire from 2003, but the soldiers have to stay there and suffer a lot. So hope all these things will work. So people will be withdrawn, Siachen will grow, and it is now known as the world has known about it, the coldest war, Time magazines and all. And our Siachen Peace Park is noted by the government of India. As you can see, the Prime Minister Manmohan had talked about peace on Siachen. It was reflecting the Peace Park idea. So we hope all these things will be done and army can withdraw and allow the roses of Siachen to grow. Thank you. I hope this geography is now understood. Thank you, gentlemen, for the talk.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, thanks everybody for listening to Harish Bhai's talk. Unfortunately, we don't have much of time to a few questions right now, so I think we'll have to hold on to that. Please post your comments out here. I've recorded this particular talk, so we will be sharing the link also. You could have a look at it, and if there are any questions, please ping me or ping Harish Bhai directly. We'll be happy to answer them totally. Thank you.